How does language emerge and how does it develop? This is one of the most fascinating questions in linguistics, and I want to tell you a story. Before I tell you my story, I would like you to imagine this scenario. Imagine that you run into a deaf person who doesn't know how to sign, doesn't know how to read or write. You don't know how to sign either. How would you go around about communicating with this deaf person? Most people in these situations would use gestures. This is the story of my father. 55 to 60 years ago, when my father was in his early 20s, lost his hearing completely. He was the only deaf person in a small town called Sadat in southwestern Iran. The hearing people around him, who consisted of his family and his close friends, wanted to communicate with him, and they use gestures. This is a home sign. A home sign is a communication system that is based on gestures. Home signs are used by the hearing people to communicate with deaf people who don't know sign language and who don't know spoken language either. They're evolved over only a single generation. They are used by a very small number of people. They have systematic phonology, syntax, and morphology. And although they're not fully developed languages, they do display language-like behavior. They have been studied, found and studied in different contexts. The most famous example of which is Nicaraguan Sign Language. I will be referring to this as ST Homesign, ST standing for Sadat Tuahar. Using ST Homesign, we can describe past, current, and future events. So it does have tense. We can talk about hypothetical situations such as jokes and stories and lies. We can form simple and complex sentences. We can negate them. We can form questions, and we can even produce relative clauses. All of these are really interesting features of language. Two main takeaways from this story. ST Homesign is not the same as Arabic, which is the spoken language in that town. On the other hand, ST Homesign is very similar, surprisingly similar to other fully developed sign languages such as American Sign Language. The first takeaway, ST Homesign is not the same as Arabic, which is very unexpected because you would expect this homesign to be based on Arabic, because why else would it be different? However, although we see that the word order and yes-no questions are similar, WH questions, negation, and relative clauses are not the same as Arabic as they are in ST Homesign. On the other hand, we find that ST Homesign is very similar to other sign languages. For example, in the case of WH questions, you see that this sign is used along with furrowing the eyebrows to ask a WH question. And you see that also in Indo-Pakistani and American Sign Language. Negation is also very similar. You see that in Greek Sign Language, Turkish Sign Language, and in our ST Homesign, this is the sign used for negation. So where did ST Homesign come from? We have some hypotheses. The first one is that the surrounding spoken language, which was Arabic, contributed to the development of ST Homesign. Some signs are iconic. You can guess what they mean. So for instance, this is drinking and this is eating, right? And this is seeing. So they're very iconic. So iconicity also helped. The surrounding culture also gave some signs, some gestures to this home sign. So for instance, this is the sign that is used in Sadat Tuahar, the town, to ask what. Also, the word order is SVO, subject, verb, object. We believe that this is a factor of discourse or pragmatic, right? So it makes sense to think of somebody doing something. So why not SVO, right? Subject, verb, object. We also believe that some body language is universally shared among all cultures and languages. And that's why you see the same sign happening in many different languages, sign languages. I dedicate this presentation to my father, who passed away 10 days ago. That will mean that ST Homesign will cease to exist, because ST Homesign is used to be used only with my father. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.